Today is Wednesday, Yutes Shvat, Tovshin Ein Gimel. We are in Teres Menachem Sefer Mamar Tovshin Yud Aleph, Tovshin Yud Beis, in the Mamar of Shabbos Pashas Achrei Mamar Chodesh and Erev Rosh Chodesh Tovshin Yud Aleph, and we are at the bottom of page Samach, actually the top of page Samach Tes, Ois Dalid, chapter 4. This Maimer is a follow-on to the previous Maimer, where we are continuing to learn about Mashiach and the special quality that he will possess, the unique ability to be able to judge through smelling, which basically means, I guess it's a euphemism for judging by feeling the other person's essence, getting to the essence of the other individual, because the idea of smelling is connected to the essence of the life force of the person, being the portal to the brain, and it touches the very highest levels of the person's life force, the person's neshama. The question that Rebbe is addressing in this Maimer is the fact that, based on the 2 points that was made in the previous Maimer, number one, the one that we just mentioned, that Mashiach will reach the other individual's essence, and as a result of that, he will also introduce the idea of tshuva to tzaddikim. So the Rebbe asked, yes, we explained that the idea of teshuva is the idea of a person feeling dissatisfied with his current situation and wanting to strive for something higher to get out of his current situation. But the Rebbe asked, this is something which exists, a concept that exists even now. Why is it such a revolutionary idea that Mashiach has to come and introduce this into tzaddikim? And although there are levels of tzaddikim whereby the conscious behavior of the tzaddik, the manifest condition of the tzaddik, is 100% okay, but it's not necessarily an indication of what's going on with his essence. And he brought the story of Rabbi Yehonoson Mochor Chodesh, who cried before he passed on, saying he doesn't know in which path he's being led. Why? Because a person's manifest condition is not necessarily an indication on what's going on with his essence. By Rabbi Yehonoson Mochor Chodesh, of course, the Rebbe says it was because of his humility that he made that statement. But it must be that it is possible. It wasn't. If it would be impossible for a person to be manifestly in a 100% as one should be, and yet his essence should not be there 100%, Rabbi Yehonoson Mochor Chodesh wouldn't be able to make such a statement. The fact that he made such a statement means that is possible. So, okay, so we understand that Mashiach will reveal the essence of a tzaddik, of tzaddikim, and therefore introduce the idea of tshuva to them. We can understand that is an innovation, something special, so far as tzaddikim that haven't transformed their very essence, but tzaddikim that have transformed their very essence, like Moshe Rabbeinu, for example. What is so revolutionary about what Mashiach brings about in them? And the Rebbe began to explain that there is the difference between iskafia and ishapcha, bending and transforming. And each one has a quality, a plus and a minus, that the other one doesn't have. The way bending, the opposite of kedusha, takes place is through engagement. So the ra, the opposite of kedusha, becomes aware of the kedusha. But that's the plus. The minus is both, so far as
transformed.
No, is just subjugated.
Right.
But it's not transformed. That's one of the minuses. So one minus is that it's not transformed. It submits. The other minus is, so that's a minus in the one that's being worked with, in the mizbarer. Then there is a minus also in the mevarer, in the one that is active and working with the Ra. That is, that through the process of wrestling, the Toiv becomes weakened. It becomes aware that there is something which is called Ra, and it becomes weakened to an extent. Then there is this hapcha, transformation. Transformation I'm sorry, going back to the first one, the Rebbe said it's like diluting salt water, right? So you mix in sweet water into salt water, into bitter water, right? What happens? You're not transforming the bitter waters, you're diluting them. So it weakens the bitter water, but it also weakens the sweet water. When you speak about this hapcha, transformation, so it is transformed, but in this method of transformation, because the Rebbe is going to introduce a third method, which is another method in transformation. But in this method of transformation, there's a tremendously strong revelation of godliness, of getlachkeit, of light, and that causes the Ra to be transformed. So the plus over here is that he's transformed. The minus is, and the plus is also that the Toiv, the Oir, is not diluted.
It gets potentiated by the Ra that is converted, so it gets stronger, the Toiv. It's on its side now.
Okay, that's an additional element. That's probably more in the third way of his hapcha. But here, the word is that a tremendous Oir becomes revealed, and therefore the Ra becomes transformed but to the extent, says the Rebbe, that it affects it in a way that it becomes transformed, right? And how does that process take place? Not through engagement. It's an automatic process. Once the light becomes present, the Ra automatically, because it's the presence of a tremendous Gilei, it's transformed. So there's no engagement, there's no dilution, right? There's no weakening. But the minus is that it's not as a result of the Ra itself. It's because of a tremendous revelation that took place that caused the Ra to be transformed. Then the Rebbe said there's an even higher level of his hapcha, which has the qualities of both. In other words, the total transformation of the Ra, not just being subjugated, not only submitting to the Teiv, right? Becomes totally transformed. That's number one. And at the same time, it is as a result of its own situation, from its own perspective, right? In the two previous ones that we discussed, they seem to be mutually exclusive. If the Ra comes in contact with the Teiv and there is this process of engagement and recognition that there is Teiv, it only can come subjugated or subdued, right, and not transformed. But that necessarily means that there's something lacking in the transformation. Whereas if there is transformation, there seems to be that it's not from its perspective, it's because it's being overwhelmed by something which is totally beyond it, right? But there is a mode where you have both qualities together. That on the one hand, it's total transformation, and at the same time, it is also from its own perspective. And that is when the Ra itself recognizes as it's nicht good.
What happened on Mount Sinai in terms of revelation and transformation?
The second.
Is that transformation?
Transformation, but in the second method, not
But for a short time.
not complete. Not the ultimate is Mashiach. That's the third one. So going back to the idea of we had hints to this third method at Sinai, and even when Eden went out of Egypt, right? Because everything needs a hachana. But the ultimate state of that third mode, which means total transformation, and from its own perspective, from within it, the confines of the Ra itself, right? For example, this took place when there was Lamakim Mitzrayim B'Fchereim, when the elders of Egypt fought each other. The Ra itself became transformed. The Ra itself recognized as a Tegnisht. The words the Rebbe used was, when the Ra itself recognizes der Hert, that he is Ra, und es wird ihm eng, he becomes disconcerted, he becomes uncomfortable and stressed from his own situation. It's a self-recognition that the way it is nicht good. The Rebbe is going to spell it out with more words a little later on. But this is how it expresses itself in the dynamic of the process. What is it? How is that in Spheris or above? The first mode of Ishapcha, of transformation, where it's not from the perspective of the Ra itself, that is as a result of a revelation of Eir. Giluyim, revelations, manifestations of godliness. The latter is as a result of the manifestation of Helem Ha'atzmi, the essential concealment, which means the very essence, beyond Eir. The Rebbe will explain that. But these are the two terms we should be mindful of. Gilui, Eir, the revelation of Eir, which causes the lower level of transformation. And then there is the manifestation of Helem Ha'atzmi, when the essence becomes present, which is quite different than Gilui Eir. Gilui Eir means that it's a Ha'ara, it's a manifestation, it's a ray, it's something which comes from the essence and reveals itself. Eir, a revelation, right? But Eir is a descent from the essence. It's not the essence. Then when the very essence of Hashem, the very essence of Getlakite becomes revealed, that's a whole different situation. To try to define it even further, let's break it down, the difference between Gilui and his Galus. When Hashem reveals some aspects of himself, there's a lot more that's being concealed. There's a revelation, but a lot more is being concealed through that process of revelation. Because what's only revealable is a ha'ara, is a lower level, a descent from Hashem's very essence. Whereas when you talk about the very essence of Getlachkeit, that can, when that manifests itself, when that becomes present, it becomes present in a dark way. You're aware that it's present, but it's dark. It's silent. Kol Mamadaka. The Rebbe will spell it out. Let's try to. I'm just highlighting these two words, these two concepts, because the Rebbe touched upon it. If you remember at the very tail end of yesterday's Shiur, we learned about it at the very tail end of Ois Gimel. Now the Rebbe is going to flesh it out even further. Ois Dalet. It's a little different. These are very, very fine, intricate concepts. But let's try to go through the Mamar again. We can always come back. But through the process of going through the Mamar, hopefully we'll have a bit of a sense of what's going on.
When God revealed himself to Moses and put Moses in the cleft in the rock, what kind of revelation was that?
Let's focus on what the Rebbe says in the Mamar here. First, let's try to understand the concept, and then we can try to organize it into the various scenarios. The Rebbe is going to talk now about the sweetening of the waters. Top of page Samachtes. This is also that in the narrative of the Torah. This is also what is being described when the Jews came to Marah and they couldn't drink the waters because they were bitter. Hashem pointed to a tree, and Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, threw in this branch, this piece of wood from this tree, into the waters, and the water became sweet. So the Rebbe goes on and says like this: concerning what type of tree it was, we find two opinions. Das HaZohar, the opinion of the Zohar, she'etz koi al haTorah, that eitz refers to the Torah. Kamesha Kosov, eitz chaim hi lamachazikim ba. The Torah is referred to as a tree. Which tree? The tree of life. So according to the Zohar, the Rebbe Rashab in Ayin Beis says that based on the opinion of the Zohar, it must mean that it was the eitz hachayim. So it wasn't just that not that he threw the Torah into the waters. There was a physical tree that he threw into, a physical piece of wood that he threw into the waters. What was that? It was a piece of wood from the Eitz HaChaim. Whatever the Eitz HaChaim was, I guess, in Gan Eden, that's what he threw into the waters. V'das ha-medrash. Then there is the opinion of the medrash. She'etz zeh hirdufni hoya. Shehu sam. This tree was an hirdufni, which is a poisonous tree. I looked up the botanical name of the tree, but I forgot what it is. I'll have to look it up again. But it's basically a tree that is poisonous. It's bitter. Some say it was. There are three opinions. One says that it was an arava, a willow. Others say it was a zayis, olive tree, and the other opinion is hirdufni. It was a hirdufni tree. Just slips my mind. It's something that you're familiar with. I think so. Is it? No, I don't remember. Don't remember. Anyway, it just slips my mind at the moment. But it's basically a tree that is poisonous. What is the idea that, in other words, being that it was a bitter tree, a tree that is bitter? So it
was like some kind of spice.
Correct.
Not like a carrot tree.
No. It was a tree that. I think also.
Why does the Rebbe choose to go? If there were three options, why does he choose not to go with a zayis or a river? Why does he choose to go with a hirdufni?
I'm sorry, I might be confusing it with what the Gemara says in Sukkah concerning which of the, when you talk about arava, what kind of a tree are we talking about? What's an arava tree? So I think over there the Gemara goes through the three options and concludes that it's arava. But anyway, the bottom line is that there's an opinion that it was a hirdufni tree. Or even if, again, I have to look it up again, but even if it was any of the other, the bottom line is, the difference between the two opinions is that according to the Zohar, it was an Eitz Chaim, which means to say a sweet tree. According to this opinion in the Zohar, it was a bitter tree. Regardless of which one it was. It was either sweet or bitter, which are essentially, it's a massive difference between the two, essentially. What are the two opinions, what are they arguing about? They're actually talking about two modes of Isapcha. Two modes of transformation. Because as mentioned before, one way of transforming is what? Through dilution. Right? Let's see what he says. Everybody agrees that Moshe Rabbeinu did not sweeten the waters by adding a lot of sweet water to the bitter waters. Right? It's not that he took water, fresh water from someplace else, and poured it into this bitter waters, and that way it became drinkable. No, he didn't do that. That is true according to the Zohar and according to the Medrash, even according to the opinion that it was Eitz HaChaim. Because when you add sweet waters to bitter waters, you don't transform the essence of the bitter waters. They remain bitter, you just dilute it. Everybody agrees. Everybody agrees that it was through throwing in a tree, a piece of wood, that the waters were transformed. The bitter waters themselves were transformed. As it says, the waters became sweet. So what are we talking about? We're talking not about iskafia, dilution. We're not talking about that. We're talking about ishapcha, transformation. The waters became sweet. Ella, in this process of making the water sweet, in the method through which the water became sweet, there are two opinions. L'das hazoyar, according to the opinion of the Zohar, that the tree refers to Torah. The Torah is called the tree of life. Which has no connection to the tree of death. Which means, in other words, is not connected to any mixing of the good with the bad. In other words, it is essentially and totally good. So according to the Zohar that it talks about that type of tree, it was that tree, Nimtza, Sham Tokas Hamayim, in other words, what is the dynamic? What is signified? What's behind this throwing in the tree of good, of ultimate and total good into the waters? It means Sham Tokas Hamayim, that the sweetening of the water took place through the great revelation of Torah. Shemitzad Gili Zeh Nepcha Hamayim Amorim L'mayim Mesukim. It's because the overwhelming great revelation of positive energy of the Torah that the bitter waters would transform to sweet waters. That's the first mode of his hapcha. But according to the opinion of the Medrash, that the tree itself was what? A bitter tree. Nimtza, it comes out. Shepeulas hashlochas ha'etz b'mayim hoisa legalis b'mayim es hamirirus shelahem. So what was the point of throwing in a bitter tree into the water itself? That was for the water itself to recognize that it's bitter. To recognize what? To reveal within the waters their bitterness. To recognize their unfavorable situation. And then the sweetening takes place from the perspective of the bitter waters themselves. Okay, so why do you need Moshe Rabbeinu? If it's from the perspective of the water itself, right? You're talking about the revelation, the water itself recognizing that it's bitter, and the sweetening taking place from that vantage point because of that. So it would seem that if Moshe Rabbeinu threw the tree in, again, it didn't happen from the water because of the water itself. It happened because of an outside force. Although this took place, was accomplished through Moshe, as it says in the pasuk, that Hashem pointed Moshe to a tree and Moshe threw it into the water. So the Rebbe answers that is because the Ra itself cannot feel that it is Ra. It needs to have some kind of a catalyst. It needs some kind of a trigger. Which is what? There needs to be a revelation from above for the waters to begin to feel. You need to throw something in there for it to begin to feel that what? As ich bin nicht gut. But it's not to be confused with a revelation of light which overwhelms it and causes it to be transformed into good. No. The action of throwing a tree in is merely there to activate this feeling within the water that it's bitter. And then the Ra itself goes out from its situation and is transformed to good. In other words, this is not the idea of the revelation of Eir, the revelation of a godly force of light which overwhelms it and transforms it. It's the revelation of the essential concealment. It's the it's the presence of that which is which is sealed beyond all seals. The Ksiv Bey, concerning which it says, Yoshes Cheshech Sisrei. He makes his hiding place in the dark. What does that mean? That means when the Etzem becomes present. Etzem that becomes present in a dark way, in a quiet way, in a still way. And what does that do? It just causes the Ra to become aware of the fact that it's Ra, and that awareness of its Ra causes the Ra to lift itself out of its negative state.